Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. Obviously, I'm not coming to you from my Portland, Oregon permaculture garden today. I'm coming to you from a minivan. My dad had a dentist appointment and I have to drive him, and there's not enough time to go home. And because of the Delta spike, I can't go into the dentist office because I'm not a patient. So I'm hiding in the minivan in the shade, and I'm working on some knitting. And I just finished a podcast episode, and I thought, okay, now's a good time to just make a little video. I want to do an update and share some thoughts and share some of the comments and like really, really great ideas that y'all had in the comment section from yesterday's video. First, I want to give a plug here to the podcast that I just finished listening to. I've gotten so many folks asking me, Angela, can you give us some more book recommendations or resource recommendations for where to go if we want to learn more about permaculture and regenerative living? And the podcast that I just finished listening to an episode on is called Green Dreamer. It's not strictly a permaculture podcast, but it is a podcast about sustainable living and about really like positive projects that people are doing to work toward healing the planet and living a life that is regenerative. So I really recommend that podcast. Every time I listen to an episode, I just feel really encouraged about the work that other people are doing to create a more just and equitable planet and a place where we are healing landscapes and healing people. So just a really good podcast. Okay, that's enough of a plug for that. On to the video. So first of all, thank you. There are a bazillion comments on yesterday's video, and I know that y'all were really vulnerable in sharing your experiences, and I just want to say thank you. And I also want to say thank you for all the really great ideas folks had in responding to the questions I had at the end of the video. So my video yesterday was about, concerns I had about the permaculture design certificate course. So I thought I would address the comments there, some of the ideas y'all had for solutions, some things I've been thinking about since I made the video, and address some criticisms that came up too. Someone had a lot of feelings and took them out on me on a Facebook group, and but it's okay to have a lot of feelings, and it's okay to have a really strong response, because PDCs are such an entrenched part of permaculture, at least since the 80s, and it's okay to have feelings, and it's okay to not agree with everything I say. So let's just talk about it for a little bit here. Now, I had a woman who was very, very angry at my video yesterday and left an extensive litany of complaints in a Facebook group where I shared this video, and also a number of like really false characterizations that were really hurtful to me. But she did say, Angela, I don't understand how you are, you're making two different criticisms that don't make any sense. You're saying that people are required to get a PDC in order to be permaculture designers, and that's not fair. But you're also saying there's all these low quality PDCs where people who aren't qualified either aren't qualified in permaculture or aren't really qualified to be teachers in general, like don't have good educational philosophy and skills for teaching, are allowed to teach PDCs, and it's wasting folks' money. And you can't have it both ways. And my response to that was, actually, both of those things can exist in tension together. It's possible to have both of those things. So I want to talk about that for a minute. Like, what are some of the ways that requiring a rubber stamp of a PDC is harmful to the community and harms people and creates a barrier where people can't do permaculture, but also, like, what can we do to work around it? And this is where I want to get into your comments a little bit, because people had so many good ideas, and I just really appreciate everybody's insight. So when we're saying that you need a PDC in order to teach permaculture design, in the comment section, somebody talked about how in her line of work, and my husband also mentioned this because he's taught college classes, he's taught graduate school classes before. Sometimes they want the diploma, but there's also a way that you can become a lecturer or a teacher based on your life experience, right? You might not have a master's degree in the required field, but you've been working in that field for decades, and that life experience, that job experience, is counted as the same as the education, as the degree itself. So I think permaculture design courses really need a way to count life experience, work experience, and skill and expertise the same way that they count a PDC, right? So that needs to be an alternate assessment, right? My spouse is a special education teacher. We talk about alternate assessments in SPED all the time. And there should be an alternate path for people so that we can make permaculture more accessible. Permaculture is about site-specific design, and it's about person-specific and community-specific design. So we need to design our PDCs and our assessments for people to become permaculture educators and permaculture designers in a way that creates multiple pathways and meets the needs of the community. So there's not one size fits all approach to becoming legitimized in permaculture. So I thought that was a really good point. Looking at other vocations, other careers, and how they do alternate assessment is something that we in the permaculture community need to really be looking at and taking lessons from in terms of creating permaculture teachers and permaculture designers. The criticism that I am not allowed to be frustrated at the fact that folks are teaching PDCs and producing low quality PDCs. I saw a number of comments on the video yesterday where y'all said, I took a PDC and it was a giant waste of my money. I took a PDC and I didn't get out of it what I wanted out of it. I took a PDC and the instructor did not have good teaching skills. I took a PDC and we didn't talk about growing food hardly at all. And I think that that's a problem, right? So what is the solution? I don't really know, because for me, I really strongly resist the notion of more regulation. And there are a couple of bodies, a couple of organizations that have declared themselves kind of oversight. And I didn't want to talk about them in the video yesterday because I don't want to nitpick specific orgs and specific groups and specific permaculture teachers. But there are bodies that have declared themselves or set themselves up as an authority to create a registry, to create oversight, and to stamp and approve PDCs. The problem is that people have taken some of the PDCs that those orgs have stamped as an approved one, as this is good and legit, and they have said, that wasn't my experience. This may be seen as a registered and accepted PDC by this body, but I did not have a good experience at it and I did not get good bang for my buck. So that problem has not been fixed by creating these registries. What has been created by these registries is many more steps of paying for fees and licensing and advanced diplomas and teacher certificates that are not in keeping with Bill Mollison's idea of how PDCs should work. And really, I think would have Bill rolling over in his grave, because to me, they seem like a capitalist venture. They seem like bureaucracy being set up, but also as a money-making venture for folks to create actually what you need to be a real permaculture designer. To prevent low-quality PDCs is you need to take this $1,400 or £3,200 course in order to become registered, in order to get your diploma to be a teacher and become registered. That is just exponentially increasing the number of barriers for people to become permaculture design teachers. And also, I just really am reticent. I'm really frustrated and want to push back against the notion that what we need is more regulation, and what we need is to make permaculture more capitalist. What we need is to make permaculture more about churning out diplomas. Look how well that is working for our postgraduate program, degree programs in the United States. Look how well that is working for universities. It's a disaster. We are selling degrees that people can't make a living off of, and I just don't feel good about the notion of individuals and small bodies that set themselves up as experts to certify teachers by creating more expensive and more onerous degrees that they must pay these orgs for. So I'm really not in keeping with that. I don't really know how to fix the issue of people who aren't qualified turning around and then selling themselves and their skills as permaculture designers or permaculture instructors after taking one PDC. Appreciated the person in the comment section who talked about how gardening wasn't really taught in their PDC, and yet someone with no gardening experience immediately turned around and started getting jobs as a permaculture designer working in gardening because they had that official PDC. Like, there it is, evidence of what I'm talking about. People not qualified get their little rubber stamp and boom, they're legit and they can work even though they're not qualified. So these are still, like, I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but these are still things for which creating more registries isn't going to fix that problem. Creating more hoops to jump through, more licenses that you need that are not accredited in any way, creating diplomas that are not accredited in any way that you pay this organization thousands of dollars to get, doesn't guarantee we're going to get better PDC design courses. It just makes the system much more of a money-making venture for a small number of people. And I don't think that's what permaculture is about. So let's talk about solutions as I'm sitting here in this very hot car getting very overheated. So I love all of the solutions that people talked about. I neglected to talk about this thoroughly yesterday, and it was kind of on the tip of my brain, and I should have mentioned it more. And that is that the formulation of online PDCs has really reduced a barrier for people. So folks in the comments said, Angela, this is my experience. This is my real lived experience. I'm disabled. I can't go work on a farm for 2 weeks. I have livestock. I can't go work on a farm for 2 weeks. I've already got my own farm to take care of. I can't go take a PDC off my property because I have small children I have to take care of. I can't leave them for 2 weeks. I have people saying in the comments, I cannot afford a PDC, even if it's, $800 or $1,200. That's not either not affordable for me or not a wise use of my resources. So I hear all of those comments below. I also hear people saying, the fact that online PDCs have been created has removed a barrier for me and allowed me to participate in PDCs when I couldn't otherwise. So I should have emphasized that more in my video. When PDCs online first came out, they were seen as like a little sketch. And then they've become more and more legitimized. And I think if we're going to talk about remaking the PDC structure, and we're talking about making PDCs work for the people in permaculture, if we're talking about changing our design so that it works for the people in the community, offering online PDCs of high quality is an example of doing that. The person who criticized me yesterday said that I didn't have a right, that I was undermining the pillars of permaculture, the foundations of permaculture by questioning the PDC system. But really what I want to do is make the PDC system work and make permaculture work. I'm not trying to tear down permaculture. I'm trying to make it more functional. That's what I want, is for permaculture to be accessible for everybody. And I see online PDCs making it accessible for a chunk of people who couldn't be there otherwise, who couldn't get that PDC certificate otherwise, and for them, they want to pursue it. So that is a first step in saying, yes, PDCs can be more accessible. Here is one way that we have adapted. We have created an accommodation for people, and it's working for a lot of people. So thanks to the folks in the comment section who said, I took an online PDC. It was great. It was the only way I could do it. That's a great first step. In the comment section, somebody also mentioned, I talked to my local PDC instructors about creating equity through scholarships, and they were very resistant to that. That's really unfortunate to hear, and I just want to say thank you for being somebody in permaculture who is not afraid to talk about these established, these established authority figures and bring up issues with them. I think sometimes these folks in permaculture who've been teaching for a long time can be seen as really paternal figures for whom we can't question any of their methods. And so to say like, hey, your courses are really cool, but they're not very accessible to people of a lower socioeconomic class. And if we offer scholarships, we can increase equity and we can increase diversity in permaculture. Would you consider doing that? It's really disheartening to hear those kinds of teachers saying, nah, folks need to pay because, I need to make a living, but also I'm not going to work at a sliding scale, or I'm not going to work at creating a scholarship fund. I think those things are critical. And so thank you to the commenter who suggested that. I think creating scholarship funds is a great way those of us can share the surplus, the third ethic of permaculture, and create opportunities for people who want to do PDCs but cannot pay the fees. So if you are somebody who is teaching permaculture and you don't have a scholarship fund and you don't have active ways that you are trying to increase equity and accessibility for your course, I would say you're doing your PDC wrong. I know when I taught workshops in permaculture, they were all free. I always encourage people to make a donation or throw a couple of bucks at me, like the same way I do at the end of my videos here. If you want to support me through PayPal, that's great. But my workshops were always free. And I think that not everybody has the privilege to be able to teach for free, but I also find that when you do that, if that is a skill or a way you can share your surplus skills, that people will compensate you. And I think Bill Mollison talked about that teachers live and die, they live and breathe based on the quality of their teaching and how much their students want to support them. And I think that's a really idealistic notion, but also there's a lot of truth to it. So keep leaving your ideas in the comment section. Keep leaving those solutions. If there are PDCs that work really well for you, talk about them in the comments so people can learn about them. Really, really valued the folks who said, I enjoyed this PDC. It was fantastic. It was a great bang for my buck. I also really, really appreciate the folks who talk about other YouTubers, other authors who have really good podcasts or YouTube videos or books on permaculture so that we can source that information for free so that folks can have that alternate pathway, that increasing access, many streams feeding into becoming a permaculture designer. So I talk a lot in my unschooling life about being an autodidact, right? I teach my kids that. I teach them to be the kind of people that can teach themselves, that know how to source out good quality education for themselves. They don't have to passively sit and absorb learning. They can go out and harness it for themselves, go out and learn for themselves, discover for themselves. And I think there are a lot of people like that in permaculture. So I love the idea of having those alternate pathways for those kinds of people who want to learn by themselves, want to learn on their own, either because of their own learning style or because of their economic or other life circumstances. Let's create those alternate pathways for legitimizing and certifying people in permaculture where they can teach themselves utilizing free resources already in the community. I also really appreciated the person in the comments who talked about one-on-one mentorship and how that's kind of underrated. I really love that idea that you can go and partner side by side with somebody who's far more experienced than you and learn what you need to know about permaculture. Kind of an apprenticeship situation, a mentorship situation. And I really love that. It kind of rejects the capitalist notion of like, I've got to have 25 people at my PDC so I can make $30,000 and make this work. It's more the relational one-on-one way of learning. And I really, really value that. So I think we need to look at that kind of solution for permaculture education as well. Put that out there as yet another one of those streams that lead toward, the great ocean of all of us learning and doing permaculture, right? The slow trickles that come down from the mountain and create like a great roaring river of creating ecological change, regenerative change, societal change. All of those contribute and feed in. We can't just have this bottleneck of PDCs. We need all of these tributaries to feed in order to really get to the place where we have lush, abundant, vital tidal waves of people wanting to embrace permaculture and regenerative living. So thanks again for watching. I know this was a little bit of a rambly video. I'm talking off the cuff today, not with my crinkly notes. I really appreciate all of your thoughts and comments. Like, this is just such a good discussion. And I just want to reiterate for the one person who left just a diatribe, like, I don't want to tear down permaculture, and I'm not doing this as a political stunt. My criticisms or like comments that I have about permaculture are all out of an earnest desire to make permaculture work better, not just for me, but like for my children, for y'all's children, to make permaculture something that is a viable and productive method and not just some kind of niche that's only accessible to a very few people with a certain set of resources in a certain demographic. So, I'm not meaning to pick on people who get their bread buttered by permaculture, design courses. I'm not meaning to like just dump on y'all. It's that I really think that we can make the system function better. And the only way we can do that is by being really honest about what the flaws are. My friend Ellen yesterday made the greatest comment about how like people that are really idealistic, me, I'm one of those people, when you criticize something that they're highly idealistic about, that they often really don't take it well, right? So something that you've kind of set on a pedestal, something that you've kind of just really romanticized or really feel is, foundational to your idealistic concepts, it's really hard to take an honest look and an honest assessment in a way that says, oh, this is flawed and it isn't actually as perfect as we would like it to be. Really fruitful and beneficial criticism is not slamming something to make ourselves look good or just to trash it. It's criticism so that we can make it better. Like the basic premise of a PDC to me, I think is fantastic. Let's teach people the basics of permaculture so they feel empowered. But the system has gone off the rails in my mind, and we need to kind of bring it back around and make changes that meet the needs of everybody. So I really got to go now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all of your really thoughtful comments on my video yesterday. And I'll be back tomorrow. Actually, we'll be in the garden tomorrow talking about gardening and harvesting and fall agricultural work on my permaculture homestead. If you're interested in supporting this channel, I have a Patreon down in the description. I also have a PayPal. If you want to just one time throw a couple of bucks at my video and say thanks for the emotional labor and time and sharing of your expertise that you give, Angela, here's $3 or $5. That's awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That would be amazing. As always, feel free and leave your opinions and questions and thoughts in the comment section. I read everything. Thanks.